This 2025 AFCON final was not Senegalese chaos. It was host power trying to manage the ending and then failing. Senegal didn't just beat Morocco, they beat equipment sabotage, ball boy interference, referee gravity, and a trophy moment stripped of dignity. And remember, if you want more Africa First stories the Western media ignores, hit subscribe. We don't chase the headlines, we chase the truth. And by the end of this video, you'll understand how structural disrespect showed up on the pitch and why Senegal's calm broke the script. When the host tilts the field, discipline becomes the weapon. So this is the Africa Cup of Nations final, Senegal versus Morocco. A host nation, a packed stadium, a match that should have been neutral. But neutrality leaned in this one, right? From the opening minutes, the disruptions were not fouls that you would replay. They were frictions, delays, interruptions, routines interfered with. And then it got eerily specific. The towel tactics, right? In wet conditions, goalkeeping is about routine, and towels matter. Edward Mendy's towel was consistently taken, hidden, and delayed, right? Ball boys were involved. Moroccan players joined the interference instead of stopping it. And Senegal's backup keeper even had to physically intervene to retrieve it, at one point being dragged across the field. That's not passion. That's equipment interference. They couldn't break Senegal's shape, so they tried to break the routine. Then Senegal walked off the pitch, and that moment matters. So let's take a look at some of these tactics that were being.
Morocco didn't just win a penalty in the AFCON final. They tried something darker. Just before the penalty, Moroccan players rushed the Senegal goalkeeper, not to argue. They tried to steal Edouard Mendy's towel, the one with penalty notes. Even Achraf Hakimi joined in. Players fell. Chaos exploded. Senegal protected the towel. Brahim Diaz missed. Senegal won AFCON, and somehow, Morocco still won the Fair Play Award. Morocco didn't just win.
All right. So there's one video that we're going to look at, right? So Senegal did not leave the pitch because of one incident either. It's important to note that they left because of a pattern, that crossed into institutional tolerance. And here's the escalation, right? Routine interference went unpunished. Ball boys acted with confidence and not fear. Referees hesitated instead of restoring order. And at that point, Senegal had two options. Keep playing and silently accept the conditions, which were no longer neutral, or stop the match and force officials to choose, right? To restore fairness or expose bias. Walking off wasn't drama, it was procedural escalation. So in football governance, there is a thing called lawful pressure. Only thing left is lawful pressure to refuse to continue under compromised conditions. And that's not emotion, that's rule literacy, right? So Senegal didn't walk off to complain, they walked off to force neutrality back into the game. And when they returned, the interference slowed, the tone shifted, the pressure transferred, and that's how you know that the walk-off actually worked. So people say AFCON is emotional, finals get heated, but the truth is when the host nation is involved, gravity changes the behavior. Referees feel it, ball boys feel emboldened with permission, players test the edge, and the late penalty, taken with casual confidence was read and saved. Senegal didn't win on luck. They won on preparation and calm under provocation. So racism in African sport doesn't always arrive in chance. Sometimes it arrives by who gets disrupted, who gets doubted, who gets denied dignity when they win, right? And then came the optics. So at the podium, the ruler of Morocco's son, Moulay Rashid, did not properly present the trophy. The handover was cold, it was clipped, reluctant, and without grace or class. And beside him stood Gianni Infantino, the FIFA president, so visibly deflated on camera as well. And neutrality is easy when the host likes the ending, right? But Senegal's walk-off exposed the real dynamic. Not Morocco versus Senegal, it's host gravity versus institutional courage. And when forced to choose, the system actually blinked here. So let's take a look at that. So here's the AFCON president with Moulay Rashid and Gianni Infantino. He looks like he's trying to hand the trophy, and they refuse, and he forces it over with them barely putting their hand on at the end. So both of them, no thank you, refuse. You do it, okay? He tries to hand it over again. They won't accept. We get over to the podium. CAF president hands it over. Johnny puts his hand on there. Moulay puts his hand on there at the last second as well. All right. So, and there we have that moment. So let's stop pretending, this is isolated. So across the northern portions of Africa, the Sahel, indigeneity or so-called blackness has been normalized through policy, language, and silence. In Morocco, race is rarely named with enforcement power. And when race isn't named, patterns are protected. You hear it as unity, but you feel it as exclusion. It shows up sideways. Obstruction instead of slurs, snubs instead of chants, procedure instead of fairness, right? So oftentimes they may ban vocabulary. So the behavior learns to whisper, but we've seen in many of these videos that the vocabulary is still there as well. So here's one thing, that we're going to address that many people dodge. Morocco's ruling structure itself is the product of migration with permission. So the Alawite monarchy traces legitimacy to Sharif and Arab lineage. So migrants who consolidated power through religion, alliances, and later colonial recognition. Under the French protectorate, the monarchy was preserved as a stabilizing intermediary. So here's the hierarchy, right? So-called elite Arab migration was sanctioned and then crowned. And then indigenous Amazigh communities were absorbed or sidelined after power was secured. So indigenous African migrants today are policed, marginalized, and blamed. That's not coincidence, that's racialized governance. And migration is considered noble when it ends in a throne, but criminal when it ends at the border. So Senegal proved you can win without favors, comfort, or applause. And youth across Africa saw discipline defeat disruption. The diaspora recognized a familiar pattern: provocation without accountability. Hosting is a test of governance, and when ball boys interfere, players assist, referees hesitate, and the podium goes cold, the host failed the test. And African football is entering its grown phase. The stadiums are ready. The talent is undeniable. What's being tested now is fairness under pressure. And as Morocco prepares to host future global fixtures, including World Cup matches, the question isn't hostile, it's necessary. Can hosts guarantee neutrality when the ending isn't theirs? So expect clear sanctions for ball boy interference, stronger protections for equipment and routines, louder continental demands that hosting means restraint and not leverage. So as we've said before on Africa Power Reports, power isn't proven by control, it's proven by restraint. So again, Senegal didn't just beat Morocco, they beat the conditions. And I do want to acknowledge that the leader of Morocco did make a statement. Mohamed The six did acknowledge that AFCON final was marred by regrettable incidents that occurred in the final minutes of the game between Morocco and Senegal, um, according to a statement issued by the Royal Cabinet. However, he emphasized that those unfortunate events do not overshadow the tournament's overall successes, stressing that once emotions subside, inter-African fraternity will naturally prevail. He reaffirmed that Morocco is and will remain a great African country committed to the values of fraternity, solidarity, and mutual respect. Um, I'll let you guys be the judge on that, but I see that we have a lot of work to do, not just in football, but for the country as a whole, right? So here's the truth unsoftened. Calm is sovereignty when the room wants you rattled. So, MashaAllah, that's your African insight for today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe because I'm Mr. Empower TV. We don't chase the headlines, we chase the truth. This is Mr. Empower, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.